Hello, and welcome to Central Booking, where writers and readers are the authority. I'm your host, John Valeri. Hey friends, today I've got a special guest for you. Okay, they're all special, but Katharine Otis is the book whisperer. If you don't know Katharine, and why is that, you really should. She's the marketing and events coordinator at Wesleyan R.J. Bookstore in Middletown, Connecticut. She began her career there as a bookseller in 2019, sharing thought-provoking and wide-ranging reading recommendations in-store and online. Anyone who knows me well knows that Wesleyan R.J. Julia has been my home away from home, and so I thought it would be fun to invite Katharine on to share a bit about the business of books. Not only does she talk about how the store has adapted to the challenges of operating during a pandemic, a challenge that has been met with great creativity and a commitment to community, but she also offers up some must-read recommendations. And while we all know that reading tastes are subjective, let me just tell you this. Katharine has proven herself an invaluable resource on the occasions that I've wanted to diversify my reading. It takes a high level of confidence to entrust my book buying to somebody else, but she's earned it. Spoiler alert, these are some of her featured fiction recommendations, which you'll soon hear more about. Melissa Broder's Milk-Fed, Mateo Askaripour's Black Buck, and Sanjena Sathian's forthcoming Gold Diggers. If any or all of these titles strike your fancy, be sure to follow the buy links in the video description to make your purchase. It's a great way to support an indie bookstore. There's more too, a nonfiction title for all you history buffs, and a few selections for Women's History Month, but you've got to listen in for those. So, on with it. We'll call this episode Miss Otis Recommends, but be forewarned, your TBR pile is about to grow. Hey everybody, welcome to a special edition of Central Booking. Today I am talking to Katharine Otis, who is the marketing and events coordinator at Wesleyan R.J. Julia Bookstore in Middletown, CT, which was pretty much my pre-pandemic home away from home, but I'm sure I'll be getting back there soon. But anyway, I wanted to welcome you to the show, Katharine. Thank you for being here.
Hey, John, thank you so much for having me.
It's my pleasure, and I feel it is my duty to whoever is watching this video to just warn them of two quick things. One, you're probably going to want to have like your little note-taking app or a piece of paper because you're going to get some great book recommendations from Katharine, but also you should know that your TBR pile is going to grow because every time I talk to Katharine or see her recommendations on social media, I find that my TBR pile grows. So it just kind of comes with the territory, but you have been forewarned. You know, it's worth the splurge, right? I mean, books are a great escape right now, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, so I figured before we get to your recommendations, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your relationship with books, because my sense is that you are a lifelong lover of books. And if I had to describe you, I would say three things: book lover, champion of authors, and socially conscious reader. If I had to name three, those would probably be the three.
Oh, that's so kind of you. Thank you, John. Yeah, no, book lover, definitely, I would put at the top of my lists of words that I would describe myself. I grew up reading books. It was such an important part of my life growing up. I think everybody in my family has always been a big reader. Something definitely that my parents instilled in me, something that my grandmother definitely instilled with me. This is actually her bookcase. I have since judged it, but a lot of the books in here were hers. And I mean, she read to me all growing up. Madeline, Eloise, lots of really strong heroines. And that just grew more and more. I always had a book in my hands growing up. And so to be able to work in a bookstore now is kind of this very strange dream come true. I didn't even realize growing up that that was a job that I could have. So now that I am a professional talker about books, it couldn't possibly be a better fit for me, I think. So yeah, definitely have always loved books and have always read really widely. I appreciate you calling me a socially conscious reader, because I try to read across all genres. I try to read across all walks of life, and really have a wide breadth of things that I can recommend to people.
Sure. Well, if anybody's, seen the page on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, they will know that you are all over the map, but it's also always spot on. Like I have read things that I probably would not have picked up if it weren't for your recommendation, which is, I don't know, I guess that's the highest praise I can give somebody who sells books, is to say that I never would have picked this up, except that you told me to and I trust you. So you have yet to break the trust.
Yeah, that is the biggest compliment you could give any bookseller, I think. So very high praise. Thank you so much.
Oh no, it's my pleasure. It's always nice to, sort of get an enlightened and refreshing view, because otherwise I tend to fall into the habit of reading the same kind of thing, which isn't a bad thing, but it's nice to, get other stories and perspectives. And I wanted to ask you about your reading, because we were talking a little bit before we started recording about, the pandemic and how some of us maybe have adjusted, a little bit better, just because we do tend to spend a lot of time in our homes with our books, and now we're spending more time in our homes probably than ever before, the great majority of us. And I just wanted to ask, is your relationship, with books or reading, have you found that it's changed at all, or is it pretty much the same to you?
I think I joked before we started that COVID is not very different than my regularly scheduled programming, that my day-to-day has not changed very much. But I think my relationships with books has changed a little bit in terms of using it more as an escape route. I mean, of course, as book lovers, we all know that books are, of course, an escape, and that's their great power. But I don't think I have dived into stories as deeply as I have in the last year or so. I'm definitely reading a lot more fiction than I normally do. I wouldn't go so far as to say fantasy, but I definitely am being drawn more toward fantastical stories, things that I can sort of read in an afternoon. Nothing to See Here was one that really towed that line of magical realism that I just sat down and read in an entire afternoon, front to back. My Sister the Serial Killer, although I read that pre-COVID, but I know you spoke with the author and know how much I love that book, and I'm sure you feel the same. And just something that's a little escapist and a little fun and fast-paced, and I think that's what I'm really craving right now.
Sure. I'm glad it sustained you, and it has for me as well. I found it's been a lot. It's always been easy to fall into a book, but I've been telling people that I feel like I've seen hours on the clock that I haven't seen in years and years and years, just because I feel that need at the end of the day to fall into a book, and it's more like for hours than for minutes if I can keep my eyes open. And I feel very fortunate for that, just because I've known some people, I have some friends, some acquaintances whose relationship with reading has really changed, and it surprised them, and they haven't been able to, find that escapism. And I fortunately have. I feel like doing some of the work has been a little bit harder, but the reading is pretty much the most appealing thing. Reading, coffee, and carbs is pretty much the story of my life right now.
The trifecta.
Yes, right. The holy trifecta of this whole thing. But I thought I'd ask you too, you've been at the R.J. Julia bookstore in Middletown, Wesleyan store for what, year and a half now? It's been a while. And it's a great store. And I wanted to ask you, in your opinion, and a couple of these questions will be very subjective, but what do you think the role of the bookstore is within its community? And then can you also remind readers why it's so important for them to support, independent bookstores versus sort of the bigger box options?
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to start off by saying too that I think the outpouring of support that we've seen in the pandemic has gone beyond any of our expectations. I would be lying if I said it wasn't a little bit of a fear that the convenience of, same day or next day shipping, fast delivery times, and Amazon pulling on huge warehouses and having tons and tons of stock, that, we weren't a little nervous going into a pandemic where people wouldn't be able to come in through our doors for the foreseeable future. And that was not the case. People wanted to buy local. They wanted our recommendations. They knew that they were going to be cooped up in their houses for, again, back last March, they didn't know how long.
Right.
So they wanted puzzles. They wanted to know what we were reading. And I felt from our customers and speaking with them over the phone, a lot of that same sort of uncertainty and that craving for comfort that I was feeling. And so it became really easy to recommend those same sorts of books to them. Nobody wanted anything too heavy. They didn't want to, you know, grim and gruesome and too much entrenched in the realities of things. So it was really fun to still book sell during that time, even though it was over the phone. And that's what you get from shopping local in any avenue. But you know, certainly with indie bookstores, you get to talk to a person who reads very widely. All of our booksellers are very knowledgeable and well versed in our merchandise, because we have to be, and we love it. So if you're looking for a specific type of book, if you have a certain genre that you're interested in, or if, like yourself, John, you want to put your trust in another person to kind of help guide you to something new and something that you think that might widen your horizons a little bit, you know, we're here.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's such a great service, and like you said, that's not something that you get shopping online. You know, it doesn't replicate in that way. But I wanted to ask too, you know, you've sort of, in a way, you have to change your business model to accommodate to the times and to what people are comfortable with, and that, you know, pertains to staff and to customers. So I was wondering if you could talk, you know, about how great challenges like these uncertain times and this pandemic sort of also create the opportunity for new creativity and ideas that, you know, sort of out of the box thinking, because you have no choice. So can you talk about how the bookstore has adapted to these times and what kind of services are available still to readers who might not be comfortable physically coming into the store, because they can still get a whole array of services without having to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. So during the first few months of the pandemic, when we were closed, we, as I mentioned, were hand selling over the phone in a lot of cases. We're still available to do that for you if you want to just give us a call, if you have questions about books that you're not sure about, that you've heard maybe on other to be read lists or interviews, and you want the inside scoop. We're happy to kind of talk to you one-on-one over the phone. We're still offering curbside pickup. So if you don't want to come into the store, you can place an order over the phone or on our website, WesleyanR.Julia.com, and we'll get it ready for curbside pickup. Give us a call and we'll run it out to your car for you. Contactless too. If you want to just open up your trunk or roll down your passenger side window, we'll place it in there for you. Not a problem. You know, and those are sort of some of the services that most businesses, I think, have adapted to at this point. But, you know, we want to still make it personal, and we want to still make it comfortable and as much like the experience that you would get under normal circumstances. And a lot of people are getting more comfortable with coming into the store as well. We are open for in-store browsing. Of course, everyone's masked up and socially distant. But if you want to come in and you want to have that personal touch, touchless, we will provide it to you. We're still here and happy to talk about books. If you want to email us, you can email us book lists. You know, we have a bookseller checking our email several times a day as well, books@wesleyan.edu. So those are all services that they're always available to you, but they're definitely services that our customers have started leaning on a little more heavily throughout the pandemic.
Sure. And I have to say, one of the things I'm really impressed with is the bookstore has such a really terrific social media presence. So even if you can't be in the store, you know, you sort of bring the store to the people, whether it's, you know, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. You do feel that connection with the booksellers, because there are videos of, you know, booksellers talking about the recommendations and why they so love the books. I look forward every Tuesday to, seeing the stacks of new releases, and it kind of makes me salivate a little bit. But I was thinking earlier, and I can't believe it, but we're recording this on March 1st, even though it'll post a little bit later, and it has literally been a year since I have physically been in a bookstore. And it breaks my heart because, like I said before, it was like my home away from home. But it's a safe option. The only reason I haven't been in is because I caretake full time for somebody who's elderly and very much at risk. So I basically don't leave my house unless it's like pharmacy, doctor, whatever. But the nice thing is that you still feel that sense of connection. So anytime I feel like I'm missing books or the bookstore, I pop online and like you're all right there. Or if I'm really feeling a certain kind of way, I just email or call and I'm like, Catherine, here's my credit card number, send me a box of books, and you will.
Oh, absolutely. Happily.
But anyway, that was my little diatribe there. But I wanted to ask you too, because I know that you started at the store, as a bookseller, but more recently you were promoted to a marketing and events coordinator, which kind of ties in with your education and background, and certainly with your interest in books. So can you talk, and thinking again about the challenging aspects of the times, but also the opportunity for sort of great creativity and innovation? Can you talk about how you go about coordinating, and marketing and actually facilitating those events, because it's like the new normal, at least for now.
It really is. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I had never heard, and I think most people, that's the big joke of the pandemic, right? Had never heard of Zoom before we all went into lockdown. And now we're all Zoom experts. So it's been really unbelievable to sort of watch this transformation of events from an in-person, because I was an event host, even when I was bookselling, I was an event host, and did in-person events both at Wesleyan and in Madison, at the flagship R.J. Julia. And to transition to this technology that none of us had ever used before and broadcast an event to hundreds of homes live was pretty daunting. Thankfully, after a year of practice, we've all gotten very good at it. And everyone's gotten very used to it. So everyone, I think, is much more tech savvy and Zoom savvy. But it was certainly a learning curve at the beginning. But it's also I was on my drive home today, I was thinking about how much it's changed the landscape and how more accessible it's made events, I think, to people across the country. I mean, we've seen people register for events in California, New York, in Indiana. I mean, Texas, like we have seen customers from all over the US, which is not something, I mean, we wouldn't have had an audience necessarily that wide pre-COVID. So I don't think in-person events are ever going to go away, but I think we're always going to be operating in this sort of hybridized world now, that we can very easily and comfortably and accessibly bring events to people who might not be able to get to a store. They might have limited mobility. It takes a lot of the ease of travel off the author. There are a lot of really good benefits to it. And again, I don't think in-person events are ever going to go away. I think people still are going to crave that human contact and want to meet their author and get their book signed. Book plates are great, but it's nothing like watching your favorite author put pen to paper and personalize your book for you. But it's been really remarkable to see the transformation of virtual events. I've come to really love it. And I mean, at the end of the day, you can just, if you want to watch an event in some other part of the country and kick back and pour a glass of wine, put your pajamas on, you don't have to go anywhere. Sign me up. I'm on board.
Yep. you just sold that, but you're right. And it's such a great way to stay engaged. And it's funny too, but now you literally can be anywhere in the world. And so there's not that, well, I can't, jump on a plane and come to you, but now you can. It'll be interesting to see when things do get back to a more normal state of being, what in-person events are like, just because so many people have adapted to this convenience of everything through virtual. But I don't know. I'm interested to see how it shakes out. But like you
Yeah,
said,
well,
virtual is great, but there is nothing like meeting your favorite author and watching them sign your book that you've read
yep,
37 times and then making them take a picture with you. Like nothing
exactly.
will ever.
Exactly.
All right, so I know people really want to hear your recommendations, so we're going to get to those. But before we do, last question. Again, I know reading very subjective, based on the person, but you are, basically extraordinaire here. You've been recommending great books for a long time now. So in your opinion, what is it that makes a good book or a reading experience for you?
Man, for me, I think the thing that makes a great reading experience for me isn't even necessarily the experience of reading the book, but what sits with me after. Like once I close that last page and I've finished it, how long does it sit with me? Even if I think I didn't like a book when I closed it, if I'm still thinking about it a week, a month, a year later, that was a good reading experience.
The author did their job there.
The author did their job. If it sticks to your ribs,
Hmm.
that's what makes a good reading experience, I think, for me.
Nice. I say a lot of things are sticking to my ribs these days, but definitely books. All right. So the moment everybody has been waiting for, your recommendations for books that you've read that you were excited about that people can look forward to. And isn't it nice to still have things to look forward to?
Isn't it though? I mean, we all have to have something.
Yes.
Okay, so the first book of 2021 that I read that I was completely enamored with, the first book that really stuck to my ribs, I think figuratively and literally, Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. And again, I don't have any, I told you, John, before we started, I don't have any of these books with me. We'll edit it in post, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Milk Fed by Melissa Broder. I do actually, though, have her first book, So Sad Today, here. She's written, this is her first book of short stories. It's based on her Twitter by the same name. She really, I think, encapsulates sad girl lit to me. She's very existential. She's very dark. She's very, I think, I don't even want to say broody or moody, but she's just very like, existential is only the word that I keep coming back to. She's written another novel called The Pisces, but I think Milk Fed is really one that she's getting a lot of attention for this year. The quick synopsis is it's about a woman she's a Reformed Jew. She has mommy issues. She has an eating disorder. Those are sort of the top things that you need to know about the main character. She has her routine. She goes to the same frozen yogurt counter every day and she gets her little treat, and she has her, like obsessive compulsive way that she eats her ice cream too, and that's her indulgence every day. And she meets the woman working behind the frozen yogurt counter, who is also Jewish, though she's practicing. Her family is very devout. And they sort of strike up this friendship. The woman behind the froyo counter becomes obsessed with feeding the main character. She wants to make her these big, huge, like spilling over the sides of the cup sundaes, and she gets very nervous because that's outside of her her caloric intake that she very, very carefully tracks, but she sort of lets herself indulge in it. And the friendship and the relationship blooms into more of a romance. And you see, of course, you kind of start to see the character development arc, right? It's so funny. It's so bawdy. It's so raunchy. And she's a phenomenal writer. Like, I cannot talk enough about this book. It's so, so good. I highly recommend it. Milk Fed, Melissa Broder. It's already out, so you have no excuse. Go, run, call,
right now.
Our Instagram. I'll see it, and I'll set a copy aside for you. So that's Milk Fed. Another book that's already out, Black Buck. That was a Jenna's book club pick, I believe. I'd have to double check that, but that came out in January. This is a really high octane, fast paced, sort of like Wolf of Wall Street meets, I don't even necessarily have another parallel to draw to it. And when I opened it, I was very surprised to even see the comparison to Wolf of Wall Street. Like, I don't know why that wasn't what I was expecting. But essentially the character, Buck, formerly Darren, works at Starbucks in a high-rise in Manhattan that houses a number of, very wealthy startup companies. And he sees all of the, big shot money mavens coming in and out of the Starbucks, getting their red eyes and getting their ventis and Trentas and all that. And he's content to just work in his Starbucks, live in his little world. He didn't go to college. He lives with his mother in a brownstone that they own. And he has a steady girlfriend and he has his friends. And he's just very content to sort of live his safe little life. And then that all changes when one of the like high profile startup guys comes into, you don't even know what the company does for the first like half of the book. But one of these like very wealthy startup guys comes in, and Buck ends up making a huge impression on him, and he invites him to come up to the top suite and let's talk, and offers him this opportunity to work at this startup. And Buck is either the only Black person who works in the company, if not one of a very few number of Black people who work in the company. So obviously you have that, very overt racial overtone. Many of his coworkers are overtly racist to him, but he doesn't want to break. He wants to prove to everyone that he can do it. He wants to make his mom proud. And then again, now you see the character arc of Buck sort of changing and going from Darren into this character of Buck. And again, it's so incredibly written that it's one that you'll read in a day. Although honestly, I had to put it down a couple times because you see that like slow motion train wreck starting and you start to see like, no, Buck, stop, no, oh. But it has so much heart on top of being really fast-paced and really well-written. So highly, highly recommend Black Buck as well. And then one that's coming out in April is called Gold Diggers. This one is about a second-generation Indian family, a kind of a cluster of Indian families that live in this same neighborhood in Alabama. And it mostly so the first half of the book takes place in the 2000s, and you see that very like high stress, a lot of pressure being put on the kids to be high achieving and to perform and to have a life that is better than their parents had, more opportunities, and you should be shooting for the Ivy Leagues and taking all these AP courses and all of that sort of, those sort of like stereotypical images that you think of in Indian families or in second generation immigrant families in general. And then a tragedy sort of befalls that friend group, and then it jumps forward and they're now all in their 20s. And there's kind of an interesting migration too from this like East Coast Alabama town to now they're all out in like Silicon Valley and just out sort of in California. And now you see where they all landed. Was it all worth it for them to have all of this pressure and take all of these, you know, AP classes and go to all of these high profile schools? And where did they really ultimately end up? And are they even really happy? So just a lot of really good, and that's only 3. I could keep going.
And you're not excited about them at all.
Oh, not at all. You can't see that I'm like all flush and like short of breath and not excited even a little bit about these books. But so that one's coming out, Gold Diggers, in April. And I talked to about a few nonfiction books. I'm still waiting for like the nonfiction book for me to dig my teeth into this year, but a couple that I just have in front of my like TBR list in front of me. A World Beneath the Sands. This one is about Egypt. I used to want to be an Egyptologist when I was little. So this is obviously not where I ended up, but I can read about it. And this goes into the history of Egyptology and sort of like Egyptomania that took the Western world by storm in the 19th century and early 20th century. And I'm also a big John Steinbeck fan. So Mad at the End of the World is a new-ish John Steinbeck biography that came out, I think in January. I have Cast, Isabel Wilkerson, still in front of me that I have to pick up. So that's on my TBR. And then 2 others that I'm really excited about later in 2021. It's even hard to say that, right? I can't believe
after 2020, it's very difficult.
Exactly. But in September, Colson Whitehead has a new one coming out, Harlem Shuffle. And Amor Towles, who wrote A Gentleman in Moscow, a beloved, I would go so far as to say new classic. He has a new one coming out in October. So those are 2 more books that I'm really excited about coming out this year.
You know, that really is exciting. Everybody loved Gentleman in Moscow. I do a book group for a library, and it's great because it's a really eclectic group of people who are very opinionated, and if they don't like something, you know, they will tell you, you know, in no uncertain terms that they didn't like it and all the reasons why they didn't like it and why it might have been a waste of their time. But it's great to have that honest conversation. But last year, one of the books we read was A Gentleman in Moscow, and it was one of the few that was beloved throughout the entire group. Like nobody had a bad word to say about it.
I have never met a person who did not like that book, genuinely. Like and even people who said, you know, it was a little bit slow to get into, and it does take a little bit to get into it, but you're just instantly charmed by the Count. Like he's just one of the most charming characters I've ever encountered. And that's, I think, another one of the like universal things I hear about A Gentleman in Moscow is that it's just so charming. You can't help but love it.
You know, it's funny. It really is charming. I mean, initially I thought it's a pretty thick book, and I'm like, how much can happen in this hotel? I mean, come on. And then you start reading it, and you just get completely sucked in. But, you know, and in listening to you talk, I think I've realized, you know, why some of your recommendations may resonate with me, because your first book involved ice cream, your second book involved Starbucks and coffee, and I'm like, okay. You know, there are a few bells ringing here. But I think that people saw too how what a breadth of recommendations that you give. I mean, these are books that take place in different worlds, different cultures, different classes, which I think is really, really fantastic. And I want to ask you, and I don't think I'll throw you off of your game because you're a pro. But I mean, it is March, so it's Women's History Month, and you have given some recommendations from women authors. But I was wondering, if there are any other books or female authors, and this can be evergreen. It doesn't necessarily have to be anything recent or newly upcoming. But are there those titles that have really resonated with you that you would recommend to people by your favorite female authors?
Ooh. I'm just going to turn around and look at my bookcase really quickly because I know that there are. Okay.
So while you do that, I'm just going to tell the people what I was thinking before is I remember, about 10 years ago or so, there was a big conversation about how we all needed to diversify our reading. And at that point, we were just talking about reading and reviewing women authors. And I was like, oh, great, I have this covered, because I read far more women than men authors for whatever reason. And now here we are in 2021, and we're like, yes, diversity is more than just, a male, female conversation. But
absolutely.
Now back to you.
Yeah. So, okay, I have, I grabbed a couple. I'm sorry, I grabbed another stack of books.
No, that's great. What we want.
So two I have here, Jesse has obviously been around the block a bit. Transcendent Kingdom is her newest one. This came out last October or September. Incredible. This book is, and it's so different from her first one too. Interestingly, I was having sort of flashbacks to this one because this also takes place in Alabama. Jessie herself, her family immigrated to Alabama from Ghana. So she puts a lot of herself, I think, in Transcendent Kingdom. Takes place in modern day. This, of course, is an enslavement story. But if you enjoyed Homegoing and you enjoyed that story, a similar story, These Ghosts Are Family, Maisie Card. We actually have an event coming up with her. We were supposed to do an event with her for her book launch last March. She's a West alum, but, COVID. So we're doing a paperback virtual event with her on the 16th. And this is a definitely one for fans of Homegoing. I haven't finished it yet.
Sticky notes.
I know. I like to be prepared when I go into events. So if you're a fan, of course, if you're a fan of Jessie, pick up Transcendent Kingdom. But if you liked Homegoing especially, I would recommend picking this one up. I loved A Burning by Megha Majumdar. This was her debut, and what a debut. I mean, I was stunned. I think, so similarly, I talked about Gold Diggers being a second-gen Indian American story, but this takes place in India, modern day. I think in my shelf talker, I said that it really shatters any sort of conceptions or misconceptions that you have about modern day India. We think so much about their caste system, and the word caste does not show up once in this book. So I think, and this is one that's told from 3 different perspectives. There is a young Muslim woman, there is a male gym teacher, and then there's a trans character as well, a trans woman. So if you're looking for breadth, if you're looking for diversity, look no further than A Burning, for sure.
That's excellent. That was really good off the cuff, see? I was like, this could throw her. No, it's not going to throw her.
You can't throw me.
No, there's no throwing you. And I'm like, I'm just looking over your shoulder at all those books. Every time I do one of these Zoom things, if people have books in the background, it's so hard not to just be, staring at them. Well, thank you so much, Katharine. It was real nice to catch up with you and to see you in some kind of real time. And
So I have to ask, might you ever write a book of your own?
I'm not going to say that I'm not.
There you go.
No, I did. I wanted to be, when I was little, I know I said at the beginning that I never thought that I could work as a bookseller. I didn't know that that was a job that was available to me, but I did know that author was a job that you could do. And I think that's definitely a dream that's still on the horizon for me. So
I feel that. I feel that. And I found that, people ask me that question a lot. So that's probably why I asked you. And I know that a lot of writers say, they can't not write and their compulsion is to write. And I think right now at this moment in my life, as much as I like to write, my compulsion and my need is to read. So I just think it's all, research and a really good learning process. I mean, when we write our books, they're going to be banging because, all this reading we've been doing.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, and reading makes a good writer. I think for all of the author events that I've done and the question that comes up, what advice do you have for aspiring writers? It's always read, always. So we're on the right track.
Yeah, we're pros. Well, hey, you're tops. So Katharine Otis, Marketing and Events Coordinator at Wesleyan R.J. Julia Bookstore. Really quickly, if you don't mind, do you want to just throw out the social media handle so people can come and find you? That sounds very stalkery.
No, please do stalk us on social media and tag us and stuff too. Wes R.J. Julia on Instagram, Wesleyan R.J. Julia Bookstore on Facebook, Wes R.J. Julia on Twitter. I may or may not have made a TikTok as well for the store. So keep an eye on that. I've been spending, like everyone else, spending so much time on TikTok that I'm saying that it's for research, obviously. So keep an eye out for that. And yes, please follow us, please tag us. We'd love to see what you guys are reading too.
Awesome. So we will drop all those links into the description in the video. But thank you so much, Katharine, and happy reading to you.
Thank you. You too, John.
Thank you.
That's it for this episode of Central Booking. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss a thing.